Every job post seems to follow the same pattern. Companies asking for DevOps expertise, CI/CD pipelines, container orchestration. And naturally, you go all in, spending hours, weeks, even months trying to learn every tool, every pattern, hoping that if you just know enough Docker, Kubernetes, or Jenkins, you will finally be prepared for what's coming. But here's a kicker. When companies post jobs for DevOps engineers, what they actually need most of the time are cloud engineers, people who understand infrastructure, scalability, networking, and security. Because without those fundamentals in place, DevOps is just decoration. And the reality is, most use cases for DevOps in the real world aren't nearly as impactful as they look on paper. Studies show that while more than 8% of companies say they want DevOps, only a small fraction actually implement advanced practices at scale. In many environments, DevOps ends up being a couple of pipelines, some scripts, or light automation, not the complex setups you see in tutorials. Because the truth is, more than 6% of enterprise workloads still aren't cloud ready. Without scalable, reliable cloud infrastructure, most DevOps pipelines have nothing meaningful to optimize. I've seen companies spend months building Jenkins pipelines only to realize their apps still couldn't scale because the infrastructure behind them was legacy. Others rushed into Kubernetes before migrating, so they just ended up containerizing problems instead of solving them. And without cloud-native monitoring or logging, your automated pipeline only tells you code deployed, not whether it's actually working at scale. DevOps is about speed, but cloud is about capability. You can't accelerate what doesn't exist yet. That's why in today's video, I'm going to show you the exact skills you should actually focus on so you can truly get prepared for the job. And here's the good news. Once you've built your foundation cloud, compute, networking, storage, security, then DevOps stops being hype and starts being powerful. Because while tools come and go, cloud is one skill set every company needs today and tomorrow. When we look back at the industry, it's important to look a little bit of a history in this industry and understand what really happened. In the past, I should say this, 10 years ago, it was very common for companies to do manual deployments. And I was part of that previous generation of engineers. At that time, I was kind of a system administrator. So we would copy applications like from one server to another, like all that code, like the artifacts from different servers. There was usually what we would call developers throwing over the fence their code to operations team. It was a very manual process. At the same time, operations was always afraid of getting that new version, new release, because usually it would break some manual steps, they wouldn't work, the application wouldn't be stable, created this friction like between developers that they would like to have their feature in production. However, operations team, they were afraid of bringing that into production because it would make unstable the environment. So this concept of DevOps came up like to merge development teams with operations team, with the goal to make software more agile, speed up the implementation, like when developers, they have new features in the softwares, in the systems that the company uses, we can bring that quickly into production environment without major outages and issues. And then the industry started getting new tools. Different companies kind of created to resolve this issue, to make this work simple. And the concept of DevOps was kind of built into tools like Azure DevOps that we know nowadays, where you have all the source code of developers there. You can create the pipelines, and these pipelines are going to deploy the code into the production environment. Usually you are going to see developers coming into this role, but they feel challenged because they don't have all the knowledge into infrastructure, all the knowledge of the cloud services, and you can see sometimes cloud engineers, they transition into this DevOps. So there were a lot of discussions in the industry, there were a lot of changes, and job descriptions, usually they would vary. You wouldn't see a consistent pattern of language. Some job descriptions, they would tell that someone would need to be from infrastructure. Others, that person would be a developer to be in that DevOps role. So there was a lot of confusion in the industry, but the main goal was just to get applications, really the work into production environment as quickly as possible. And then even a product manager from Microsoft, he came up with a quote that would say something the lines of, the real goal of DevOps was just connect people and make agile software deployments, like regardless of the tools. But we see that there is a lot of fragmentation in the industry, like with the tools that you want to use. Some things, they embrace different patterns, or sometimes we don't have any patterns, like people jump into the team, they know some tool, they can make things faster, they implement that, and it will depend on the maturity of the company. I believe now with this AI revolution that we are seeing, like everything now has AI built in, and we all know now it's real that it's very straightforward using any model like ChatGPT or Copilot to create scripts that you can add in your pipeline. It's really easy to get that nowadays. Doesn't mean that is 100% of the time right. Sometimes you need to tweak. But building from scratch all those scripts that DevOps people, they would be working on back in 2021 when I was working in the finance industry here in Australia, I would see a lot of scripts, PowerShell, Bash script into one specific DevOps tool called Octopus that's very strong here in the Australian market. I noticed that even in my team, there were people with that role, DevOps engineer, that would be working on that, but they would need to touch the infrastructure. They would need to build the infrastructure. So eventually, this same company, because they noticed that it was harder to find DevOps people, they started advertising for cloud engineering. The cloud engineer would step into this DevOps role. And I saw this different times in the industry back in 2023 that I did another transition into a startup that was creating a greenfield project. I met there one developer that was a DevOps engineer doing all this work, and I feel that he was trying to learn a lot of the infrastructure, how that would work. Like he had coding experience, but was required to learn all the fundamentals of the Azure services, the costs, how he would set up like the network, computing. I really see that myself coming from the systems administration, systems engineering, and later cloud engineering background, picking up the DevOps tool that nowadays, if we really focus, if you master 4 tools in that ecosystem, you are well set, and that is Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions. You understand how you configure the pipelines there, and you master one infrastructure as a code tool like Terraform or Bicep, and one scripting language like PowerShell or Azure CLI. You can build any solution, and once you understand that, you can even replace this PowerShell or Azure CLI with Bash, and you can build those pipelines to deliver that software that the companies are looking for or developers are looking to bring into production. With all the AI now being able to create code, I believe that only native DevOps roles, they have more chances to be impacted by AI. And we saw this even Satya Nadella from Microsoft. He was telling that the traditional developer probably now will be more kind of a solutions architect. He needs the systems thinking, and people that are working as a cloud engineer, they are developing that skill. And this is one of the things that we pride in our Cloud Engineer Launchpad here, that we teach real world projects and we help the students to understand that systems thinking that's required to think like an architect, like you are building and deploying cloud solutions, but how you think on all the systems that they are connecting together. Creating a script nowadays, we all know that it's common sense, like any model of AI can create easily a script for you, but how you glue all the systems together, that requires another level of mastery that only doing practice and being exposed to real-world project will help you to fast track. And if you would like more information on this, feel free to check in the links below. You have more information about our Cloud Career Launchpad that will help you to succeed in this career. I will see you in the next video.